Well, hello again and welcome in, wherever you are today and wherever you're listening from. I'm so happy to have you over to feast upon God's Word together. Get your plate ready today and take a seat. It's the 44, which is Matthew 4:4. Man cannot live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Let's eat. I'm your host, Jed Yancey, and as we speak, this is the year of every other year of vacationing with the entire Yancey side of my family for a week. And when I say entire, I mean the whole gang, well, minus a few this year that weren't able to make it work. But for those of you that don't know, what the whole gang means or entails when it comes to my family is a lot of people. I've got 9 siblings, and all but one of us has children. And so plus we got 2 buns in the oven that are due in 2024 that, everyone's super excited about and happy. So let's just say these aren't your typical Airbnb or, VRBOs that we're having to try to find for us all to fit and all to be together. But it's one of my favorite times of the year, every other year, not just because of gifts and good eating, but because of family and being around family more than is typical over the course of a calendar year. And I'm sure it's the same for you to some extent, or I hope it is. And, so I started to think one of the things that has become a big thing when we're all together for these vacations is my sister Christy heads up some time of reflection of the past year and taking a peek forward, as well as, we all kind of set our resolutions for the next year. I want to be better at this. I need to improve here or there, whatever it is. She's the master when it comes to that kind of stuff. And me personally, not so much, especially resolutions, plural, which is why last year I tried to emphasize and focus on just one thing. And so anyways, I've been praying about some things as we near the end of 2023 as it pertains to this. And then my dad dropped by my office 2 weeks ago and was talking to me about this TED Talk titled The Profound Power of Gratitude and Living Eulogies. And so he sent me that. I gave it a listen, and hello, 2024 resolution. Not plural, which is really more of a death wish than anything. Now, by saying that, I'll tell you here from the start, I don't mean death wish in the context that, we use it or we define it like my desire or my wish is for someone to die. But rather what I do mean, and what the woman who gave the TED Talk was talking about in her 10 or so minutes, which, by the way, I'll link that TED Talk in the description of this episode in case you want to give it a listen and a watch. But what she meant and what she said was that her wish, and now my wish, and now my 2024 resolution is to not leave any regrets, especially as it pertains to people I'm surrounded by and the people I love, and then the unavoidable occasion of death. You see, after listening to this, I couldn't help but to think of 2 passages that we so often go to at times of funerals, and both are from Ecclesiastes. The first of those, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, beginning there in verse 1. There's a time for everything. There's a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, all these times. And in there is the reality that there is a time to be born and a time to die. We see also in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, beginning in verse 1, a good name is better than a good ointment, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. It's better, verse 2, to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be happy. You see, I hate to be morbid, but death is not only very real, but it's completely unavoidable. There's a time for all of us. We don't know when our time is, let alone the time of all these incredible people that you and I are surrounded by. And it sounds so scary. It sounds so terrible. I don't even like to think about it. And we want to avoid it. And yet, what we read in God's word is that not only is it unavoidable, but that it's a good thing, especially for the follower of Christ to die. And it's good for those that are left behind that loved that person to go to a house of mourning. The implication here, what I see is that of a funeral or a memorial held in honor of that person. There are tears, hearts are heavy, there's sadness over the finality of that person's time on this earth. Going back to Ecclesiastes, though, like we read that, we quote it, but do we ever consider why or how it is better? Or better yet, how it can be better, and how we can make it better to go to a house of mourning than to go anywhere else. I think sometimes of those that I've known that have, already passed away from this temporary place and passed from their temporary bodies. And I personally live with a lot of regrets sometimes over those that, I didn't tell them this, or I didn't say that. I wish I would have spent more time with them, hugged them a little tighter when I saw them, maybe made amends. And it turns out that when you Google the top 10 regrets of most people, that nearly all of them, all of those regrets have to do with the very same things: relationships, people, loved ones. It's crazy, right? Because in the right here, in the right now, we can get so focused on all these other things, our careers, our phones, on worrying, on stress. And what happens is that all these other things distract us away from the everyday choice of gratitude and thanks and kind words. And as Miss Andrea calls it in her TED Talk, an opportunity for grace notes. And she talks so much about the avoidance of regret when it comes to loved ones, and how that has everything to do with right now and saying what I need to say right now, writing a letter of gratitude for people right now, loving people, showing you love them right now. And man, this one hit me square between the eyes, and I'll tell you why. Many years ago, when I first became a dad with my oldest daughter, Finley, I opened an email account up for her, so that over the years, I could send her pictures and write her letters and tell her what's happening in her life. And as most of you know, those words that I write for her and my daughter Hadley and my son Nash to read one day are so full of how much I love them, how much they mean to me, and the memories that we made, like all the things. And yet I couldn't help but to stop and think, wow, am I telling them all those things now? Like right now? Do they hear it now? Do they feel it now? Do they see how much I love them right now and how much they mean to me right now versus years down the road when they can read how I felt so many years ago? And I got to tell you, the very thought of that right now, knowing that if something happened, like how much regret I would live with. Wow. Just wow. And so you're 44 today. As 2023 turns over to 2024, I don't know where you're at in setting resolutions for next year, but this is one of those things where we can all make some application in the right here and the right now. We're short and sweet today, but as I close, I want you to consider Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 24 that says this: gracious words, grace notes, as Miss Andrea called them. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. And the true beauty within those words, and likewise my actions toward those around me, aren't just that sweet honeycomb for the soul, for the ones they are directed towards. Those words and those actions are directed towards. They bring the giver of those words and those actions the very same sweetness and good health to the body and the soul. I'm praying that you all have a happy new year and that God will do amazing things in your life in 2024. As he does that and will do that, may we all consider the opportunities we have in front of us now to love, to forgive, to give others the very things that we feel inside about them that they need to see and that they need to hear and that we need to give. Don't wait. Join me in doing these things now. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next week.